everyone, my name is Tiara, aka Bookworm Babe, and today I'm going to be doing my May wrap-up, which is a little bit late. I was supposed to do it last week, but things have been very crazy, so I decided to put it off until this week. In terms of May, I guess it was because the weather got nice, or because, like, I don't know, just, yeah, probably because the weather got nice and it just wasn't necessarily, like, cooped up inside all the time. But I definitely read less in May than I did in April. If you saw my April wrap-up, I think I read like 6 or 7 books. This month I only did 4. So it was very different this month, but they were 4 really interesting books, all very diverse genres at that. I like to do, because sometimes when you're reading too much of like one type of story, after a while you need something a little different to switch it up and just, you know, change the mood up essentially. And I don't know, I'm trying this angle. I did this in my last video where I did my makeup and talked about some bookish questions, but I'm trying this new angle instead of just sitting directly in front of my shelf, because I feel like this is a little better. I get better camera light, and I don't know, I just kind of like the setup better, but I guess we'll see how that goes and if I decide to keep it or not. My room's not very big, so I try my best to work with the space that I have for this. But I'll stop talking and get right into the books that I read in May. The first book that I started off May with, it was a bit of a thriller mystery. Was like a love story and a love, you know, triangle type of thing in there. It was one of those books that just basically had a lot of everything in it. So this is called He Will Be My Ruin by K.A. Tucker. This, I went through this really fast because honestly I really enjoyed it too. So it's about 2 characters. One is Maggie, and then Maggie's best friend's name is Celine. Maggie lives across the world in Africa, and her best friend Celine lives in New York. Maggie is a humanitarian. She has her own organization that does like different missions, building schools, equipment, everything for communities that need it, obviously on the other side of the world. So she is pretty much never in America, whereas her best friend Celine lives in New York. She wants to be an appraiser and work in the arts world. She loves art. She's a huge collector and she collects vintage items. She thrifts like crazy looking for special gems. So the story starts where basically Maggie is on her way to New York because Celine has been found dead, and it is claimed to be a suicide, which came from a mixture of drugs and alcohol. Celine is known to have depression and go through depressions, and then basically as Maggie comes to Celine's apartment to pack up her things and to figure out what's going on, she essentially gets wrapped up in Celine's world. Everything that led up to the months before her death. And because they were living so far apart, and although they were best friends, their lives were, you know, busy and not always able to be in touch with one another. So Maggie discovers so many things about Celine that she didn't even know, and she was shocked at the fact that she didn't know these things about her best friend. There's some really fun characters along the way. There's Ruby, who is Celine's neighbor down the hall, and she's an elderly woman who we find out later in the book that she was a writer, and she always has tea with Maggie every day, and because she's been in the building for so long, she's like the expert. And then there's Grady, who is the building super, and then there's Jace, who is a very rich icon there in New York, and he is a very interesting part of Celine's life and just to the bigger picture. So he and Celine did have a relationship, and Maggie finds that out, and basically she wants to meet Jace. She wants to find out everything she can because she's very adamant that her best friend did not die from a suicide. So she goes on basically what you can call like a wild goose chase, trying to figure out what happened to Celine, questioning whoever needs to get questioned. She hired a private investigator, and one of the best things I think is that the characters are so surprising in this book. You think that certain things, like you think it's one thing and then really it's the other. but overall it was like a 4.5 star read for me. It really gets you at certain points. You're like, oh my god, like what is she gonna do? What's happening here? Like, and that's something that I really like in books. The only thing that I didn't like about the book is that I think that certain things were kind of stereotypical. So Maggie is very rich, and one of the biggest obstacles that Celine faces and that ties in with other parts of her life is the fact that she struggles big time with her finances. Maggie is like a white character. Celine is I believe Mexican. Celine's mom was Maggie's family's maid, and that's why Celine and Maggie grew up together and became best friends, is because they were like because Celine and her mom were living in the house as well, because her mom was the housekeeper. So I kind of didn't like that, because I feel like it's just so stereotypical of those roles, like, you know, the Mexican family and they're like the cleaners, the rich white family, and then, you know, your rich white best friend is always, you know, offering to pay for things and stuff like that, and then Celine is always saying no, despite the fact that Maggie has the money to do whatever. Celine just refuses, and she doesn't want to take a penny that isn't hers. But yeah, I didn't really like that, because I felt like it was just very, very stereotypical, and it could have been a little different. It didn't really have to be exactly that. But that was He Will Be My Ruin. Otherwise, in terms of the story, it was really, really good. So the next book that I read, oh my god, so this is also partially why it took me so long to read during May. So I read The Temple of My Familiar by Alice Walker. I don't have the book on me right now because it's at my boyfriend's house, so I'm just gonna like insert a little picture right here so you guys can see what it looks like. It's written by Alice Walker, who also wrote The Color Purple. The book highlights the interwoven stories of, I think it's 5 characters. So there's Arveda, who is a musician. There's Carlotta, who is Arveda's wife. She is of Latin American descent, and she's very disconnected from her roots. Then there is Fanny, who is married to Suelo. Fanny is a very imaginative character. She is on a different mission than some of the other characters and very tuned into her spiritual side. Suelo is a professor, and he certainly does like the status quo. He doesn't like things getting changed up, etc, etc. And then there is Mr. Hal and Miss Lissy, who are friends of Suelo's uncle, who had passed away, and hence why he is at his uncle's home. And then there's just a lot of like, there's the main characters and the minor characters. So there's Zede, which is Carlotta's mother. There is Mary Jane, which is a white woman who ended up having a relationship with Fanny's father down the line, but Fanny never really knew her father. If you guys have read The Color Purple, Shug and Sally are in this book too a little bit. They are Fanny's grandmothers. And then, am I missing anybody else? I think that's it. And then there's Fanny's father, who's in there along the way too. So to explain this best, because it's such a interwoven story. It starts off in somewhere in like South America, wherever Zede and Carlotta are from. And so basically Zede became a teacher, and then wherever they were from was in the midst of a lot of like violence and stuff. I think it was like political violence, and hence why there was war and stuff going on. She took Carlotta and escaped from their country and made it to America, and hence started a new life. Carlotta later on in her life meets Arveda, who's a musician, and Zede, her mother, is a really good seamstress. She makes these really pretty feathery pieces that she learned from her own mother. And that's how Arveda and Carlotta cross paths, because Arveda has bought a piece from Carlotta's mother, and then she would go deliver it to his house, and then they got together. Whereas Suelo and Fanny are going through a weird time. Fanny still wants to be in each other's presence, but she doesn't want to be married, and that is very difficult for Suelo to understand. And then as he is packing up his dead uncle's house, which he also inherited, he meets Mr. Hal and Miss Lissy. And Miss Lissy she's less of a just, I don't know how to describe it. She's kind of like a spirit in a way, because she tells Suelo all about all of her past lives. She can remember from the most like earliest periods of time into all moving into like the early periods in Africa before slavery. During slavery, she recalls a life where she was taken, and everything going forward. And so her character is a very big character because she has a lot of commentary about the historical side of things. And the biggest part of this book, I'd say theme-wise, is that it's all told from the female perspective. We're given the female perspectives and their feelings, what they're going through, their thought processes in their relationships that they're having. And the relationships do get very twisted, I will have to say. Arveda ends up falling in love with Carlotta's mother. Carlotta and Suelo work at the same school, and they end up having a little relationship, and while Fanny's in Africa meeting her father for the first time. And then towards the end, everybody kind of sections back off to who they were originally with and whatnot. But everything in between is the twists and the turns, and there's just a lot of commentary on life and society and relationships between men and women, and especially just the lives of women. So it's very interesting in that sense. The book at times, I just didn't understand what was going on, to be honest. So I had a really hard time like indulging in it. It took me like 2 weeks to read. So personally for this, I'd give it like a 3-star. It was not the most interesting. It wasn't a page turner for me, I should say. It was a really good book, and there was a lot of good lessons and themes in it for sure, and there were parts that were very interesting, but it was hard for me. Sometimes the writing I just didn't get what was going on, and all the characters, the chapters were just long, like it was complete quotations from like the first page of a chapter to the end of the page of a chapter. It would give a couple sentences of like where the character's at, what they're doing, and then all dialogue, so all quotations. And it just, I don't know, I wasn't a big fan of that. But if you are a fan of Alice Walker, you may have a different opinion. It just, for me, it was a bit of a slow read, but I can definitely appreciate the good points in it as well. The next book that I read is Just Mercy. Y'all have been seeing me talk about this for, I don't know, like the entire year. Like, yeah, I have it. I haven't seen the movie because I haven't read the book. Well, I finally read the book, and I cannot say enough good things about this. I'll tell you guys right now, like off the bat, this was a 5 out of 5 stars for me. I really, really, really enjoyed it, and it really prompted me to do a lot of research after I read the book because I was very, very interested in everything that I read about. So this may prompt something similar for you if you read this as well. So Just Mercy is about Bryan Stevenson, who is a lawyer, and of course the case that it follows primarily throughout the book is Walter McMillan, who was wrongfully convicted of a murder of a young girl at a laundromat. Walter was nowhere near the scene of the crime. There was so much evidence pointing towards the fact that he did not do this, but despite that, the judges went off the basis of very unstable testimonies that barely even made sense, and he was in jail for I think 13 or 14 years, and not even just in jail, he was on death row. So the point as well of Bryan representing him was to get him off death row as well as get him acquitted of this murder charge that he did not commit. So the biggest themes in here were the fact that there are a lot of statistics as well as other just mini stories that go alongside the bigger storyline of other cases that Bryan took on along the way. So we're talking about prisoners who are condemned for murders they did not commit and put on death row. We're talking about juveniles who committed a petty crime, not even a murder or homicide, whatever, at a young age, 13, 14, and they're thrown into full-on adult prisons and on death row as well. So it's very, very tragic. Ultimately what happens to some people. And then the thing is too is courts never took in people's backgrounds, if they came from like abusive homes, if they came from violent neighborhoods, if they had mental disabilities, things like that that impaired their judgment or maybe were a reflection of why they committed certain crimes. And Bryan and his organization fought for not only those people but ultimately fought to change those rules that are in the US court and get people acquitted of like death row. And even if they are going to still be in jail, they don't need to be necessarily in death row. So their work was amazing because they repealed a lot of laws that really weren't even fair or even shouldn't even really be a thing, and worked so tirelessly to get Walter McMillan off of death row and acquitted. And the end is still a little bit sad because I think it's a huge commentary on the fact that even though these prisoners were eventually freed, it doesn't reverse the damage that's been done to their lives and the harm that's been done to their lives either. Walter came out of jail with a really good spirit and he was very, very happy to be free again, but at the same time he had lost his life. He lost his wife, he lost his job, his business that he had created, and then after he got out of jail, he had a very unfortunate accident that only further paralyzed him, and then his health ultimately disintegrated after that, which is unfortunate, and that all came from the after effects. So I could go on about Just Mercy for such a long time, but if you are interested in things that deal with wrongful imprisonment, and of course this is, you know, focused on prisoners of color, black and brown, that is obviously the more common demographic that these things happen to in the United States. As far as it says here, I'm from Canada, so I can't necessarily speak to what the US is like, but that is ultimately what Just Mercy deals with, and if that is of interest to you, it's definitely a really good read. The whole pace of the book is good, despite the fact that you're getting a lot of information and facts. I don't personally think it ever got boring, and it's something really good to look into in terms of seeing something really great that somebody in this world has done. So Bryan Stevenson, EGI is the organization. It's worth Googling for sure. Check out what they do and everything. And yeah, if that's appealing, pick up this book because I swear to God, you will not like regret it. And the last book that I read this month was a poetry book, and I actually read it on my phone, which is not very like unlike me, but it is. I'm gonna just pull it up to show you guys. Hopefully you can see it. Okay, maybe not. But this is called Forget Me Nots, and it is by Tiffany Manbodh, and it's a book of poetry that basically talks about Tiffany's journey with sexual abuse, the recovery period, and her mental health, and ultimately being able to thrive after going through a really traumatic experience. So I really, really loved this poetry, guys. There was such a nice structure to all of her poems. They had like little like rhyming parts. It didn't rhyme line for line, but there was some really nice parts where, you know, the lines would line up and rhyme, and they would just be really well articulated. I love poetry. I've always loved poetry. The only thing is I go through like a poetry book, I can go through so quick, so I don't have enough poetry on my shelf. But really awesome is Tiffany Manbodh is also an Indo-Caribbean author, so let me just highlight that. And I think it was a very brave and courageous book to write, to be able to articulate everything that she had gone through. And the way the book is written is almost as if it's actually like a story. So as you go through each section, you are taken through the events that occurred. So her being with that person, the event that happened with the person, the aftermath, her taking that step away to focus on herself, herself, and she's very authentic in the sense that some of the poems are very they're upsetting, because not every day is going to be a positive day when you're recovering from something that is traumatic, and then you're going to have good days. So it's very bold in that sense, I think, because she is honest with her feelings, and the more honest someone can be with their feelings, the better the poetry is. So overall, it was a 5-star for me. It really was. I genuinely enjoyed it. It was a quick read. It was like 117 pages, I think, so I was able to just like get through it, enjoy it, pick it up anytime on my phone when I felt like reading and stuff like that. And I just genuinely enjoyed the like lyrical flow, the vividness, and the way she was able to storytell with her poetry. So that was a really awesome one for me, and you guys should definitely check her out as well. So that is it for me today, guys. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for checking out this May wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Do let me know if you've read any of these books. Let me know what you think of them. Are you gonna pick any of them up? The usual. I appreciate everyone who likes, subscribes, and comments. We just hit 30 subscribers, which is not really much, but to me it really felt very exciting, because I'm like, oh my god, that's like a classroom full of people. So like, wow. I'm really excited about that, and I hope that I can just keep like giving you guys things that you'll enjoy. So I will see you guys in my next video. I think I'm going to do one more video this week just to make up for last week as well, and this month is also Read Caribbean, so please pick up some Caribbean books, some Caribbean authors. It is totally worth it. Support your Caribbean authors, and yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.